Her voice trembled through the phone. "Sweetheart, I need your help." For a second, I didn't recognize it. That frail cracking sound on the other end of the line. Then it hit me. It was her. My grandmother. The same woman who hadn't said my name out loud in almost 15 years. The same woman who used to pull my cousins close at family dinners, her arms wide, her smile bright. While her eyes skipped over me like I was invisible, now she was calling, begging. "I don't know who else to turn to," she said, breath shaky. "Please come." And just like that, every buried memory, every sting I'd tried to forget came crawling back. The Christmas she gave everyone gifts except me, saying, "Oh, I didn't think you'd be here, dear." The birthday parties where I stood in the corner while she took photos with everyone else. The time she told my mother loud enough for me to hear, "She's different. I just don't feel the same connection." I used to cry quietly in my room after family gatherings, wondering what was wrong with me. Was I not pretty enough? Not sweet enough? Did she see something in me she didn't like? Something she couldn't love? But the years had changed me. I wasn't that quiet, awkward girl anymore. I had built a life. One I was proud of. A good job. My own apartment. Peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop waiting for someone's approval. And now she wanted me back in her story. I didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. Then she whispered, "Please, you're the only one left who can help." The words twisted something inside me. Not pity, not yet. Something colder, because I knew my grandmother. Every word she spoke had a reason. She didn't reach out to people. She used them, so why now? Why me? "I'll think about it," I said quietly, and hung up before she could reply. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of her voice kept replaying in my head, scraping at old scars I thought had healed. Maybe I should have just ignored it, moved on, but I couldn't. Because beneath all the anger, there was a question I'd carried for years. Why didn't she love me? And I knew, if I went back, I might finally get my answer. When I pulled up to her house 2 days later, the air was heavy with déjà vu. Same creaky porch, same ivy crawling up the sides. Except now, the paint was peeling and the garden, her pride and joy, was overgrown. I stepped inside, and there she was. Smaller than I remembered, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, eyes swollen with age and regret. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Her voice cracked on the word thank. I stood there silent. "You've grown so much. You look just like your mother." It was meant to be a compliment, but all I heard was the echo of the years she'd chosen not to see me. I forced a polite smile. "What did you need, Grandma?" She hesitated, and that's when I saw it. The fear in her eyes. The kind that doesn't come from loneliness. It comes from guilt. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. Then she looked away. "I need you to help me fix it." Her words sank into the air like a secret. A secret she'd been carrying all along. And something in her tone, the way her voice trembled, told me this wasn't just about family drama. This was about something much, much bigger. What kind of mistake could make a woman who ignored her own granddaughter for years suddenly beg for her help? And why did I feel like it wasn't me she was trying to save? But herself? She offered me tea like nothing had happened. Like years of silence could dissolve with a steaming cup of chamomile. Her hands shook as she poured. I noticed the chipped edges of her favorite teacups, the ones she never let me touch when I was younger. Now she pushed one toward me. "Drink," she said. "You must be tired. I didn't touch it." "I'm fine," I said. She gave a small nod, eyes darting to the window like she was watching for something. The air between us was thick with unspoken things. Her house, once filled with laughter and gatherings, was now quiet. Too quiet. Family photos still lined the mantel, except none of them included me. My cousins smiled in every frame, perfect and polished. Weddings, graduations, holidays. It was like I had never existed. And yet, here I was and sitting in the house where I'd once been invisible. She finally spoke. "I've been Unwell, I just nodded. I figured. You wouldn't have called me otherwise. Her eyes flickered. A flash of shame or anger. Maybe both. Then she sighed. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said years ago. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Why now? She hesitated. Her lips trembled. Because it's all falling apart, she whispered. What is? I asked. She looked up, eyes wet. The family, everything, and it's partly my fault. The clock ticked behind us. Each second sounded louder, heavier. For a moment, I thought she was going to confess something real. Something deep. But then she smiled, thin and shaky. Would you help me sort through the papers in the study? My hands aren't what they used to be. I blinked. That was it? That was her big confession? Still, something about her voice made me stand up. I walked into the study, the same one she used to keep locked. The room smelled like dust and old secrets. Stacks of papers covered the desk, yellowed with time. A small wooden drawer sat half open. Inside, I found it. A letter. Tucked neatly under a pile of unpaid bills, it had my mother's name on it. And below it, my name, my breath caught. The handwriting was hers. My grandmother's. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. For Emma. To be opened only when the truth can't stay buried any longer. My throat tightened. I looked back toward the living room. She was still there, staring at the window, lost in thought. My heart pounded. I should have waited. But I didn't. I read it. And what I saw made my stomach twist. It wasn't a letter of apology. It wasn't even for me. It was a confession, a secret that tied her, and my entire family, to something dark. Something about money, property, and a betrayal that went way deeper than favoritism, the kind of secret that could destroy reputations. When I stepped back into the room, she looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. You found it, didn't you? She said quietly. I froze. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who had waited years for this moment. Now you understand why I called, she said. Because you're the only one who can keep this from tearing us. Apart, her voice was almost pleading, but beneath, it was something else. Control. The same control she always had over everyone. I held the letter tight, my pulse racing. I didn't know what scared me more, the secret itself, or the realization that she still thought she could manipulate me. But as I stared at her, one thought began to burn in my mind. What if this time I didn't play by her rules? I didn't sleep that night. The letter burned in my mind, every word carved into me like a wound. I read it again and again until the paper started to fray in my hands. It wasn't just a family dispute. It was a cover-up, one that explained everything, why she ignored me, why she avoided my mother's name for years, why she suddenly wanted me now, because I was the one holding the missing piece. The letter detailed how, after my mother died, Grandma had kept something that wasn't hers, a part of my mother's inheritance, left in trust for me, a property, a small house, the one my mother had worked her whole life to buy. It had been in my name since I was 6, but my grandmother never told me. She'd sold it, used the money, and forged documents to make it seem like it never existed. And now, years later, someone must have found out. That was why she'd called me. Not out of love, not out of guilt, but out of fear. Because if the truth came out, she could lose everything. The next morning, I found her sitting in her armchair, sipping tea like nothing was wrong. The smell of lavender drifted through the air. Her favorite. I stood there for a long moment, the letter hidden in my sleeve. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked quietly. She looked up, startled. Tell you what, dear? I took a deep breath and dropped the letter on the table. Her face drained of color. Where did you find that? Your drawer, I said. You wrote it. You signed it. For a long time, she said nothing. The ticking clock filled the silence, slow and relentless. Then she whispered, You weren't supposed to see that. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Of course not. I was never supposed to see anything, right? Not the gifts you gave everyone else. Not the love you saved for them. And definitely not the truth. Her hand trembled as she reached for the paper, but I pulled it away. I trusted you, I said. My voice cracked. Even when you ignored me. Even when you made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere. She looked up, eyes glassy. And for the first time, I saw something real flicker there. Not guilt. Fear. You don't understand, she said. Your mother. She made mistakes. That money wasn't yours, I snapped. Her lips tightened. I did what I had to do. For the family. The words hit like a slap. For the family. The same excuse people always use when they want to justify cruelty. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking. I could have screamed. I could have walked out right then and never looked back. But I didn't, because deep down, part of me wanted to know. If she could bury a truth this big, what else was she hiding? So I said nothing. I just stared at her, the letter clutched in my hand. After a long silence, she leaned forward. Please, Emma, she whispered. You can't tell anyone about this. Especially not your cousins. They'd never forgive me. I met her eyes. Oh, you mean the same cousins who watched you ignore me every Christmas? The ones who never said a word? She flinched, her voice softened. I'll make it right. I'll put something in your name again. We can fix this. But there was no we. Not anymore. I looked at her and saw it clearly for the first time. Not the sweet old woman everyone else adored, but the calculating matriarch who'd spent years rewriting history to protect herself. And the thing about history is, once the truth starts to surface, it never stops. I stood up. I'm not here to fix your mess, Grandma, I said quietly. I'm here to make sure it's never buried again. Her eyes widened. Emma, what are you going to do? I didn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know yet. All I knew was, for the first time in my life, I had the power, and she knew it too. But power changes people. And as I would soon learn, it also makes enemies out of the ones who swore they loved you. When I was 13, I started to understand the cruel choreography of my family gatherings. It was always the same. Long tables filled with laughter, polished cutlery gleaming under golden lights. Everyone performing this perfect, elegant show for Grandma. My cousins sat close to her, whispering secrets, holding her hand. She'd pat their cheeks, call them her little treasures. And me? I was just the shadow at the far end of the table. I'd try to talk. I'd mention a small win from school, a poem I wrote, a science project I placed in. But before I could even finish a sentence, Grandma's voice would cut through mine, soft but final. Oh, that's nice, dear, she'd say, not even looking up. Then turn to my cousin. Now tell me more about your ballet performance, sweetheart. Every time she dismissed me, it felt like something sharp sliced quietly inside me. I'd glance at Mom, waiting, hoping for her to say something. But she never did. She'd just smile politely, eyes glued to her plate, pretending she didn't notice. That night, after everyone left, I heard her in the kitchen whispering to Dad. She just doesn't click with her. You know how Mother is? And Dad sighed. Then maybe your mother's the problem. I smiled quietly from the hallway, clinging to that one sentence. Because for the first time, someone said it out loud, but it didn't matter. Grandma's world didn't include me. When I got older, it became clearer. She adored success stories, anything that made her look good in front of others. My cousin got into a top university. Grandma posted about it everywhere. My brother landed a scholarship. She hosted a dinner to celebrate. Me, I was studying literature. In her words, dreams are fine, but dreams don't pay bills, dear. She said it once in front of everyone, her tone sweet, but the message cruel. The room went silent. I remember forcing a smile, my throat burning. Then I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and cried quietly so no one could hear. That was the moment I decided something. If she wouldn't see me now, I'd make sure one day she wouldn't be able to ignore me. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about being seen. About proving I mattered. I threw myself into my studies, my writing, my work. Every late night, every rejection letter, Every tiny success. I kept them like invisible scars, reminders of why I started. And the years passed. I graduated, got a modest job, moved out. Grandma never called, not once. Even when I was hospitalized after an accident, she didn't show up. But when her favorite grandson got engaged, she threw a grand party and sent me an invitation last minute, probably out of politeness. I went. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to see for myself if she still had that same cold look in her eyes. And she did. She looked at me like I was some distant guest, not her own blood. Then she leaned close to my mother and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "I still don't know what she's doing with her life." That one sentence, it burned into me. I smiled, nodded politely, and left early that night. But something shifted inside me. A spark. A promise. If she wanted to measure worth by success, by appearances, by control, then I'd rewrite her rules, because one day I'd be the one holding the power. And when that day came, she'd finally see me, not as the quiet, invisible girl in the corner, but as the woman she never thought I'd become. And that day was closer than anyone could imagine. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how the biggest shifts in life don't come with fireworks. They arrive quietly, in the middle of ordinary days. I was at work, sitting in a small gray cubicle, typing words for a client I didn't care about. The office buzzed with fluorescent boredom. I was drinking cold coffee, half dreaming about quitting, when my phone lit up. Grandma. I froze. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. She hadn't called in years. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when I'd been in the hospital. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hello?" There was silence, then a trembling breath. "Sweetheart," she said softly, voice cracked with age and desperation. "It's your grandmother." My chest tightened. She sounded small. The woman who once commanded every room, who spoke like royalty, suddenly sounded human. Fragile, even. "What's wrong?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. She hesitated. I need your help." Those words didn't fit her. Grandma didn't ask for help. She ordered it. So when she said them, my stomach twisted with something between disbelief and bitter amusement. "What kind of help?" Her voice broke. "It's about the house. And some papers. I can't trust anyone else." I almost laughed. Couldn't trust anyone else? What about the grandchildren she paraded around like trophies? The ones she loved more than her own shadow? I didn't say that, though. I just sat there staring at my computer screen, her voice echoing through me. She continued, rambling about how things had gone wrong, how my cousins had gotten greedy, how she was all alone now. Every word dripped with irony, because that's what she built, her kingdom of control, her circle of perfect favorites, and now it was turning against her. "Please," she said again, her tone cracking. "You've always been different, kind. I know I haven't always been—" I cut her off. "Stop." Silence. I could almost hear her breathing. Shallow. Careful. "You ignored me for years," I said quietly. "You made me feel like I didn't exist. Why call me now?" She didn't answer. Just a soft trembling, "Because I have no one left." And for a long moment I didn't know what to feel. Anger, pity, victory. It was all tangled inside me. I could have hung up. I should have. But something deep and complicated made me say yes. "Fine," I said. "I'll come." When I reached her house later that week, it was like walking into the ghost of my childhood. The grand white mansion that once smelled of fresh roses now reeked of dust and old perfume. The portraits of smiling grandchildren still hung on the walls, but their eyes looked different now. Colder somehow, and there she was, sitting in her living room, wearing a silk robe, her silver hair perfectly pinned. She tried to smile when she saw me, but it faltered halfway. "You came," she whispered. I nodded. "You said it was urgent." She gestured for me to sit. "It's about trust, about family." But I could see it already, in her shaking hands, in the way she avoided my eyes. It wasn't about family. It was about fear something had happened. Something that shattered her control. And I was about to find out exactly what. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed. She looked at it, flinched, then turned it face down. Her voice trembled as she said, "They've turned against me." "Who?" I asked. She looked straight at me, her eyes glistening. "My own grandchildren." And at that moment, watching the woman who once made me feel invisible sit there, small and afraid, I realized something dark and powerful. The story wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, because this time she needed me more than I ever needed her, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to help her. Or make her finally feel what I felt all those years. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stop thinking about her face. The way her hands trembled. The fear in her voice. The same woman who once made me cry for being too emotional was now crying in front of me. Life has a cruel sense of balance, doesn't it? The next morning, I found her sitting by the window, staring out at her dying garden. The roses were withered, the fountain dry. The place that used to feel untouchable now looked defeated. She didn't notice me come in. I stood there quietly, watching her, wondering how someone so powerful could look so lost. "Grandma," I said softly. She turned, startled. "Oh, you're still here." Her voice carried that same brittle pride, like she didn't know how to sound grateful. "I told you I'd help," I replied. "You said something about papers?" Her lips pressed together. Then she nodded toward a stack of envelopes on the table. "Legal documents, property deeds, bank letters. They're trying to take everything from me," she whispered. "The house, the accounts, even my jewelry. The ones I gave them, now they're claiming it was all theirs to begin with." I frowned, flipping through the papers. The signatures were all over the place, her grandchildren, the same ones she used to worship. The ones she said were everything I could have ever wanted. Why would they do this? I asked. She looked at me for a long time before answering. "Because I taught them to." The words hit like a slap. I raised them to believe that power was everything. That kindness was weakness. I thought I was preparing them for the world, but I only taught them how to destroy it. Her voice cracked. "And now they're doing to me what I once did to you." Silence filled the room. The kind that hums in your ears and makes your chest ache. She reached for my hand. For a second, I didn't move. Then slowly, I let her touch me. Her skin felt fragile, almost transparent. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't deserve your help. But I'm begging you, don't let them win." Part of me wanted to say, "You made your bed." Part of me wanted to walk out, let her drown in her own cruelty. But another part, the one she'd ignored all those years, finally had power. And that power felt intoxicating. I started visiting more often, going through documents, calling lawyers, fixing what she'd neglected. She began to trust me, to lean on me, and for the first time in my life, I had her attention. But something was off. The more I helped, the more secrets surfaced. Hidden accounts, letters, old contracts signed in names I didn't recognize. It wasn't just her grandchildren who were after her. She'd been lying to all of us. For years, I found an old photo in her study one evening. A family portrait. She was younger, smiling beside a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't my grandfather. When I asked her about it, she froze. "That was a mistake," she said. "A chapter I buried long ago." Her tone made my skin crawl. That night, I went digging. Through her drawers, her closets, even the old locked chest at the foot of her bed. And what I found inside made my blood run cold. Letters. Dozens of them. Written to her, from people begging for money, forgiveness, or both. Names I knew. Names I didn't. And at the bottom, a single photo of a child, smiling up at the camera. My mother, only the date didn't make sense. Because according to that picture, my mother had been sent away before Grandma ever admitted she existed. And suddenly, everything clicked. Why I was treated like an outsider. Why Grandma never called. Why the other grandchildren were family and I was always that girl. I wasn't her equal. I was her reminder, a living symbol of the mistake she wanted the world to forget. I sat there on her bedroom floor, shaking, letters spread around me like broken glass. And all I could think was, she ignored me because I was the proof of her lies. The next morning, when she came down for breakfast, she smiled faintly. "Good morning, dear." I stared at her across the table, the truth burning in my chest. "Good morning," I said quietly. But inside, I wasn't the same person anymore, because I finally knew who she really was. And this time, I wasn't going to be her secret. I didn't go back to Grandma's the next day, or the one after that. I needed space, air, anything that didn't smell like her perfume and lies. Those letters haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's smiling face, that little date printed in the corner like a scar. I could almost hear Grandma's voice echoing in my head. That was a mistake. A chapter I buried long ago. A mistake. That's what she'd called my mother. That's what she'd called me for days I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I'd stare at my reflection and wonder how many generations of shame were stitched into my DNA. How much of my life had been dictated by a woman's fear of being found out. By the time Grandma called me again, I was ready. She sounded weaker this time. "I need you to come over, sweetheart," she said. "They're threatening to sell the house." Her voice shook, almost breaking. And for a moment, I wanted to feel bad for her. But then I remembered. She'd built her empire on other people's pain, so I went. But not to comfort her. When I arrived, the house felt different, smaller almost. The grand chandelier was dim, and the marble floors had lost their shine. Like the place itself was tired of pretending. She was in the living room, hunched over the fireplace, staring at the flames. "Thank God," she said when she saw me. "I didn't think you'd come." "I wasn't sure I would," I replied quietly. She smiled, trying to regain her composure. "I know you've been upset. I've done things I'm not proud of, but you don't understand the pressure I was under." "The pressure to erase your own daughter?" Her face went still. "What did you say?" I took a step closer, pulling the photograph from my bag. "This? You said she was a mistake. You buried her, just like you tried to bury me." Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. "Where did you find that?" "In your chest," I said coldly. "The one you kept locked." "Just like the truth." She looked at me, really looked at me, and for once she didn't see the timid girl she could control. She saw fire, tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't enough. "You don't understand, Stop!" My voice cracked like thunder. "Don't rewrite history again. Don't you dare justify what you did to her. Or to me." She flinched, shrinking back like I'd struck her. "You taught everyone that weakness was something to be ashamed of," I continued. "You made people feel small just to keep yourself big. And now you're alone, and you can't figure out why." Her lips trembled. I did what I thought I had to do. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You did what made you look powerful. But power means nothing when the people around you only pretend to love you." The fire crackled between us. Glowing against her tear-streaked cheeks, she whispered, "You sound just like her." "I should," I said. She raised me. For the first time, her pride shattered. She broke down completely, sobbing, clutching the armrest, the weight of years pressing down on her. And I stood there watching her crumble. The woman who made me feel invisible was now begging for mercy. But mercy wasn't what I came for. I came for the truth. And I wasn't leaving without it. "Tell me everything," I said. "About her, about me. No lies this time." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. So she told me. How my mother was born out of wedlock. How it would have ruined the family name. How she'd sent her away to live with a cousin, pretending she never existed. How, years later, when my mother came back, strong, successful, radiant, Grandma had slammed the door in her face. I stood there, trembling, my fists clenched. "She came back?" I whispered. Grandma nodded. And she begged me to take you in after she died. The world tilted. My mother hadn't abandoned me. She'd been rejected. That was the real reason Grandma ignored me all those years. Not because she didn't care, but because she couldn't stand to face what she'd done. When she finished, she looked up at me with wet eyes. Now you know. Do you hate me? I didn't answer. I just stood there in the silence, the fire's glow flickering between us, like it was trying to burn away everything left unspoken. And maybe that's when I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the story she'd stolen from me. The next day, I packed up all those letters, every secret, every photograph, and I walked out of that house. Because if she wanted forgiveness, she'd have to earn it, and I had plans to make. Plans that would finally make her see me, not as her burden, but as her reckoning. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, her warm smile fading into my grandmother's cold eyes. One begged for love, the other buried it. The next morning, I sat by my window, sunlight cutting through the blinds in narrow gold lines, and I made a decision. If Grandma had built her reputation on lies, then it was time the world saw the truth, not out of cruelty, not even out of anger. But because silence had protected her long enough, I started small, a simple post on social media. A black and white photo of my mother holding me as a baby, with the caption, "Some people bury their past to look perfect. I'm done keeping their secrets. No names. No drama, just honesty." And yet, within an hour, the comments started flooding in. Old family, friends, neighbors, people who'd grown up hearing my grandmother's stories about her perfect life. They were shocked, curious, hungry for truth. Then came the messages. Is this about who I think it is? You mean she had a daughter she never talked about? Tell us more. I didn't reply. Not yet, because this wasn't about gossip. This was about exposure. A week later, Grandma called. Her voice was frantic. "You're ruining me," she hissed. I stayed silent. "You think you know everything, but you don't." "I gave you everything!" I almost laughed. "You gave me silence." And then I hung up. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was release. For the first time, she didn't have control over the story. I did, but I wasn't done. Not yet. Because a month later, the community planned its annual charity gala, the same event my grandmother had ruled for decades. The same one where I'd always been seated at the farthest table, ignored like a shadow. This year I was invited, not as a guest, but as a speaker. They'd seen my post. They'd heard my story, and they wanted me to talk about resilience and truth. Oh, the irony. When I walked into the ballroom, heads turned. The chandeliers glowed, the air smelled of roses and wealth, and there she was, Grandma, seated near the front, her pearls glinting under the light. Her expression was frozen like marble. Our eyes met for the first time in weeks. Her glare said everything. "Don't you dare," I smiled. "Because I would," the host called my name. Applause echoed. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I took the stage. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "I grew up believing silence was a form of strength," I began. "That pretending everything was fine made you powerful." I looked directly at Grandma. "But silence is not strength. It's surrender." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "I used to think love had to be earned," I continued, "that you had to prove you were worthy of being seen. But I've learned something. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need approval to tell the truth." I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. Somewhere in the crowd, I heard a quiet gasp. Someone whispered, "She's talking about her family." I didn't stop. "I lost my mother too soon," I said. "And for years I thought she abandoned me. But she didn't. She was erased. By someone who couldn't handle imperfection. By someone who thought appearances were worth more than love." The silence in that room could have shattered glass. I saw Grandma's hand tremble slightly, her eyes glistening. But she didn't move. didn't speak. So tonight, I said softly, I dedicate this speech to her, to the woman who raised me in secret strength, who taught me that love is louder than shame, and to anyone who's ever been told they're not enough. You are. Applause erupted. People stood. Some cried. I felt something break free inside me, a chain I hadn't realized I'd been dragging my whole life. When I stepped off stage, I didn't look back at Grandma. I didn't need to because for the first time, she had to look up to see me. But later that night, as I walked to my car, I saw her waiting near the exit, frail, trembling, but still proud. You had no right, she said, her voice shaking. You humiliated me. No, I replied quietly. You did that to yourself. She took a step closer, desperation flickering in her eyes. Please don't ruin me, I met her gaze. I didn't ruin you, Grandma. I revealed you. And as I walked away, the night air felt lighter, like the world had finally made space for the truth to breathe, but I had no idea. The story wasn't done yet, because the next morning I'd wake up to a phone call that would change everything. One final twist I never saw coming. The next morning my phone wouldn't stop ringing. At first I thought it was the aftermath of the gala. People reaching out, sharing kind words, maybe journalists wanting a quote. But then I saw the caller ID, Aunt Ruth. Her voice was trembling. You need to come to the hospital. It's your grandmother. My stomach dropped. For a moment I just froze. After everything she'd done, all the lies, the cruelty, the silence, my first reaction wasn't anger or even pity. It was confusion. What now? When I arrived, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and regret. The hallways were cold, the fluorescent lights humming like a dull heartbeat. I found her room at the end of the corridor. There she was. The woman who'd spent her life building walls of pride was now small, pale, hooked up to machines. Her hands, once perfectly manicured, trembled against the sheets. When she saw me, her eyes widened. You came, she whispered. I wasn't sure I would, I said. I didn't think you would, she replied. A weak smile flickering. The nurse left us alone. The silence between us stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she said, They told me it's my heart. Fitting, isn't it? The one thing I never used properly. I wanted to laugh, cry, scream. Anything but stand there feeling the ache crawl through me. You shouldn't have come, she murmured, turning her face away. But I stayed, because as much as I wanted to hate her, a part of me still wanted closure. After a while, she reached for a small box on the table beside her. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it toward me. Open it, she said. Inside was a locket, old, gold, slightly tarnished, with a tiny photograph inside. My mother, holding me as a baby, the same picture I'd posted online. I kept it, she whispered, all these years. I looked at it every night. I told myself I didn't care. But I did. Tears welled up in my eyes. Then why? Why did you treat me like I didn't exist? Her lips quivered. Because every time I saw you, I saw her. And every time I saw her, I saw the mistake I made. The love I was too proud to fight for. Her breath hitched, and for the first time I saw it. Fear. Not of me, not of death, but of herself, she continued. You were supposed to be my second chance, but I couldn't bear the mirror you held up. The monitor beeped softly beside her. I could feel time slipping through the cracks. I watched you grow, she said faintly. From a distance, I saw the woman you became. And I'm proud of you. Those words, ones I'd begged to hear as a child, now sounded hollow, fragile, like glass about to break. I swallowed hard. You had decades to say that. She nodded, tears spilling down her face. I know, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I stood there, my chest tight. No, you don't. She looked up at me, broken, vulnerable, human. But do you hate me? I took a deep breath. No, I said softly. I don't hate you. I just finally see you for who you are. A single tear slid down her cheek. Then maybe that's enough. The nurse entered quietly, checking her vitals. Grandma closed her eyes exhausted. Her hand loosened on the blanket. Before leaving, I placed the locket gently back on her chest. "Keep it," I whispered. "Maybe it'll remind you what love looks like, even if you wasted most of it." And then I walked out. The air outside was crisp, cold, and freeing. But just as I reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. Another call from Aunt Ruth. "Sweetheart?" she said, her voice breaking. "She's gone," I froze. The world tilted. Gone. Just like that. The woman who ignored me, who broke my mother, who built her empire on pride and lies, was gone. And suddenly, the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like an ending I wasn't ready for. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself, really looking. I didn't see her reflection anymore. I saw mine. That's when I knew. Her story ended in guilt. But mine was just beginning, because I had one more thing to do. A final gesture. A choice that would decide what kind of woman I would become. And tomorrow, at her funeral, I'd make it. The day of her funeral came cloaked in gray skies. The kind that makes even marble statues look like they're mourning. The church was filled with faces that had known her wealth, but not her warmth. Business partners, old friends, socialites in black designer coats, all whispering about the empire she left behind. None whispering about the family she destroyed to build it. When I walked in, every head turned. Some with curiosity, some with judgment. But Aunt Ruth gave me a small, approving nod. I took my seat near the front, clutching the old gold locket she'd given me. It was cold, heavier than it looked, like it carried more than just a picture. The priest began to speak, reciting words that sounded beautiful and empty all at once. She was a woman of strength, of vision, of legacy. Legacy. That word burned in my chest, because legacies aren't made from money or power. They're built from what, and who, you leave behind. When the priest asked if anyone wished to say a few words, silence filled the room. I wasn't planning to stand up, but my body moved before my mind could stop it. As I walked toward the podium, the sound of my heels echoed against the marble floor. Sharp, deliberate, final. I looked at the polished coffin. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, I felt clarity. I wasn't supposed to speak today, I began, my voice steady, because for most of my life, she didn't speak to me either. A few heads shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them feel it. She was proud, fierce, powerful, but she was also human, and humans make mistakes. Some we can fix, some we just have to live with. And she lived with hers, I paused. The silence was thick. She taught me something, though. That love, when buried under pride, rots. That forgiveness, when delayed too long, dies before it's given. I took a deep breath. She never said sorry, but in her own broken way, she tried. I opened the locket, showing the faded photo of my mother holding me as a baby. She kept this for decades, and that's how I know she loved us, even if she didn't know how to show it. My voice cracked, just slightly. So today I'll say what she couldn't. I turned toward the coffin. I forgive you. The words felt like iron melting into air. Heavy, then gone. I forgive you, I repeated, softer this time. Not for you, for me. Because I refuse to carry your ghosts any longer. I placed the locket gently on top of the coffin. The faint click of metal against wood sounded like closure. When I turned to leave, I caught Aunt Ruth's eyes. Red, trembling, proud. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Outside, the sky finally broke open. Rain poured down, washing the steps, the cars, the grief. I stood under it, letting it run through my hair, down my face, cleansing everything. The wind whispered through the cemetery trees, like her voice, but softer now. Not cruel, not commanding, just I walked away from the grave with nothing in my hands, no anger, no resentment, no proof to show the world, only peace. because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom disguised as mercy. And as I reached my car, the city skyline in the distance glowing through the rain, I whispered, "Goodbye, Grandma." Then I got in, closed the door, and drove away toward a life that was finally truly mine.